Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we're just doing the quick check around that we are live wherever we need to be on Facebook and on YouTube and in the Zoom channel. And g'day to everyone here around us. We might even see some people on the screen. There we go, Alex Bruce, who's got himself muted. Welcome. To those of you who haven't been here before, g'day, my name is Scott Fitzsimons, and I look after the whiskey and spirits here at the Oak Barrel. That's Connal coming in hot and heavy with his coffee at 6 a.m. in the morning as well from the UK. And boys, how's my audio? Is it too loud, too soft? Too loud, too soft?
Yeah, you're fine. So, sorry, we're just laughing at Ben, sorry.
Thanks, guys. Nice to see you.
Let's see if we can get this onto gallery view while we're in the. We'll come back to that in a second. But tonight is a very special tasting. Something that we scrambled together a little bit last minute because there wasn't a huge allocation of these whiskies that came into Australia. So we've scrambled together. We managed to get 6. And then madly air freighted something very special over that's going to be our 7th. Before we get started, there's a few things I wanted to go over. If you're in the room and you haven't been to an oak barrel tasting before, there's 7 whiskies in front of you, sorry. We're going to go through some pretty serious booze. If you need the toilets at any point, they're just up the back, and there's plenty of water on the table. We know where we can get you some more if you need as well. If you're sitting at home, wherever you are, you're going to have to direct yourselves to the toilets and the tap for more water. But there is something about Adelphi tastings at the Oak Barrel that in recent times, whenever we try to do something in the room, the world seems to implode around us. And for those who might be further afield, because we know we've got people all over Australia tuning in tonight on the Facebook, the YouTube, and in the Zoom chat, we've had a bit of a community transmitted case here in Sydney, and as of announcement 11 o'clock this morning, masks are back, as you can see. There's no dancing, no singing in the pubs anymore. I know you all like to dance and sing at Oak Barrel tastings, you're going to have to control yourselves. But the way that we've been doing these hybrid tastings is based around having half the people in the room at a very good capacity, a very safe capacity, and then having more people online. And the thinking about it was always that if something like this happened, we could react very quickly. And that's very much been the case today, because we obviously I sent out an email at about 11 o'clock saying this is what's happening. At about 12 we followed that up, and there was a few people that said, actually I'd prefer to do this at home, and that's totally fine. And presumably, if you've bought a ticket for the in-store, we can then quickly batch up your tastings into a virtual kit and get it out to you same-day courier. So for me, that's the system working. It was built for situations and days like today. So a big thank you to you guys and everyone watching on the stream as well, because it's all good putting systems in place, but if people don't react and put their hand up and say, actually, I feel, just got that little tickle in my throat, I'm going to stay home today, the system falls over. And for those of you particularly further afield, it might be a little bit trivial, 1 or 2 cases, but I prefer to go through a little bit of this inconvenience and just get this normal to see anything like certain other countries around the world are seeing at the moment. But I would like to now introduce to the stream, or to the virtual room here, founder of Adelphi Bottling and Ardnamurchan Distillery, Alex Bruce, and somewhere on another screen is sales, what do we call sales manager these days? Sales director? What's Connal called these days?
Just whatever, it's fine.
Beautiful. Very familiar faces to the Oak Barrel. I think, Alex, this is probably including virtuals, you'd be your 8th or 9th appearance here, and Connal, probably you're up to about 4 or 5. We've also got Ben Baranow from Baranow's Emporium, who brings all this in and makes it happen, hiding somewhere on the screen as well. But to kick off and introduce themselves and give us a bit of an update of what's going on over there in the UK, can we get a round of applause from the people in the room for the team from Adelphi?
Thanks very much, Scotty. Great to see everyone. Well, in fact, we could see everyone, but now we can just see bottles. But anyway, great to have seen everyone, and really nice to know that we have lots of people online as well. Over here, the situation is gradually emerging. if we can say that, from a rather long lockdown post-Christmas. We are now in Scotland allowed to travel within the country, and I had the delightful opportunity to visit the distillery for the first time since November, just on Tuesday this week. And actually, that's probably the longest that I've never been, if you like, to the distillery since we built it. So it was really good to go up and see the team, who are all doing well. We've been in full production pretty much all of this year, which is also great. And we are just starting to build 2 more warehouses up the hill because we are running out of space again. But equally down here, where I'm speaking from today in Fife, where we do the bottling, we're incredibly busy too with getting the Ardnamurchan latest batches bottled and out the door, but more on that later. But in the meantime, just great to see everyone, great to be back in the oak barrel virtually. And Scotty, do we get to sign a virtual board for the wall? I can't hear you now.
Yeah.
I did say when we're doing these hybrid ones, we're going to chip away at them each time, and I'm standing up because I'm sick of sitting down, and but I'm away from the mixing desk. So yes, you do get to sign a board. I'll take a photo of it.
Great.
Then you send me the PDF version of the signing, and then I get the intern to trace it out. So
Perfect. Thank you.
This is a bit of a hodgepodge, this selection tonight, but I think we'll kick straight off into it too. We'll kick off with the Laudale, which is a Glen Elgin this time around. Being one of my favourite Adelphi bottling series, largely because it's had a lot of Linkwood, my favourite distillery in the past. But we're moving on to Glen Elgin this time. So Alex O'Connor, you want to maybe take us through this release, and the only one at 46% we're trying tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. And it's great to be back, even in this virtual environment that we know so well now. But yeah, Laudale. This is batch 4, so this is the Glen Elgin that we're about to walk you through. And yeah, there was a bit of a revival, if you like, of the Laudale. It was the first one, I think, was out in, I want to say 2012. Alex may maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but so a couple of years ago, we managed to find some casks, some sister casks that we simply vat together and reduced down to 46%. It's a single malt. And it's usually first fill sherry barrels or hogsheads. And so what you're drinking tonight is literally just 4 hogsheads of Glen Elgin from first fill Oloroso sherry, all 12 years old, vatted together and reduced down to 46. Just to increase a little bit of a batch size and be able to get an Adelphi bottling into some more people's hands to enjoy is the whole idea around it. And you know, it's a really approachable whiskey. It's not too full on. It's natural color. It's unchill filtered. It's all the good stuff that we know and we love about Adelphi, I suppose, but not single cask. But it's merely 1 out of 1,440 bottles or something like that. And yeah, it has changed. So the first one was from a family distillery, let's say, that cannot be named. And we've moved on from that to Linkwood was number 2. Dailuaine was number 3. In fact, we're trying a Dailuaine this evening. And this in your hands tonight is Glen Elgin. And we're currently putting batch 5 together as we speak. So you might be a little bit happier to learn, all going well, Scotty, that it will be another Linkwood for the next Dailuaine. So yeah, no, it's a really good way of getting a little bit more whiskey out to market, as long as it tastes good. But in regards to why do we call it Laudale? What is Laudale? You know, what's that got to do with anything? So
I think it's actually pronounced Laudale in the Australian vernacular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laudale.
Yeah,
is it's an area not very close to our distillery, and we've launched a Dale series. I think that sort of happened in 2007. And to be honest, I'm going to let Alex take this one because you're much more you launched it, so who better to talk about it than yourself? So you want to talk us through the Dale series, Alex?
Yeah, just as my phone starts ringing, which is
just hang up. How rude.
Live TV, don't you love it?
Tell them to go away. Unplug it.
Well, Alex,
okay, I'll talk.
For everyone in the Zoom, and I want to say good day to Dennis and Sarah and everyone. And Sarah, we got your pack to you just in the nick of time, which was great. But there's a bit of chat going between the panelists here, and the question was posed, I think, from Alex to who invited Hugh Hefner to tonight's tasting. I think Ben is doing it there.
You need to warn us about that, Ben.
Going back to Laudale or Laudale or Laudale, if you're speaking in Gaelic. This actually, the Dale series, as Connal said, we brought it in the late first decade of the 2000s, really to establish some names from the Ardnamurchan area, so that by the time we'd built the distillery, which we'd already thought about doing at that point, we would have some brands that we could potentially affiliate with Ardnamurchan, if you like, the local area. We started with Fascadale, which in those days was made up of several casks from an island distillery that we couldn't name, the one with the bridge. And we then proceeded, but eventually we came to Laudale. Now, Laudale at the time, as the place, actually belonged to our chairman, Keith Faulkner. And Keith's particular palate, he's very much suited to the sherried style of unpeated whiskey, if you like. So more of the sort of Speyside sherried style. So this was designed with his palate in mind, given that it was the name of his house. And it's remained that way ever since. And as Connal rightly pointed out, the first batch was from an unnamed Speyside distillery, and then subsequently it's been from named distilleries in Speyside, but all at 12 years old and all from that first fill sherry style. So yeah, just it's basically, it's always been that kind of Christmas in a glass. It's been a really nice, rich kind of Christmas cakey, raisiny, big sort of dark fruits and chocolate kind of style. But I hope you like this. Glen Elgin is one of my favorite distilleries. It's a very underrated single malt, and yet it is what is classified as a top class distillery. So in the great old days when casks were traded on their quality of their make, top class distilleries had the bonus of getting more casks back, if you like. So one cask of a top class distillery would be worth 2 casks from a first class, and so on down the chain. So generally speaking, top class distilleries have been used for blending and trading more than single malt in the past. But this is a very, very good distillery.
Yeah, I think particularly when I was getting into my whiskey journey, part of it was going and finding these distilleries, these workhorse distilleries, and particularly the ones that were sort of like top graded, that are even now, you know, distilleries like Linkwood, Dailuaine and Glen Elgin, they're not single malt, they're not released heavily as single malts because they don't think they can stand up. It's because they are so in demand by the blenders that there's not enough to go around. This for me sums up, you know, a little bit of what Adelphi is in terms of an independent bottler. I think once you drink a lot of independent bottlers, you get to know the style, because there's either one person or a team of people choosing the casks that go into these bottles. And I think this is very Adelphi, this bottling, that you know, rich sherry, but incredibly clean and very, very precise. If I can ask a question before we move on to the other one, obviously you need a few casks to create a batch of this, or Fascadale or something like that. What is it purely an access thing that puts this into a batch rather than going to a single cask release?
Do you want me to say that, Connal?
Yeah, by the way.
So yeah, it slightly is access. It's also obviously flavour first, as it always is with Adelphi, and the batch size has traditionally been based around where we're doing our bottling and what's available to vat it, quite simply. So in the very early days, we were using a third-party bottler, and they were obviously much bigger than us, and they could vat any size we wanted. So if you remember the early batches of Adelphi, they were quite large. I think from memory, 3,000 plus bottles. And then we brought all our bottling in-house, and we were governed by the capacity of one single IBC for vatting, which is 1,000 malt liters. So that is basically 1,500 bottles. Yeah. However, going forward, because we're now bottling Ardnamurchan as well, we actually have a shiny stainless steel best part of 30,000 liters vat in our warehouse. So that does mean that we could potentially increase the Dale size again if we want to, but it's still going to be flavor first, and it will depend on what we can find that can vat to give us that flavor.
Yeah. Any comments in the room or on the chat? I am being very rude and going to my phone, but I'm trying to monitor the various feeds from all over the place to say g'day to everyone, and g'day to Whisky is my jam and everyone on the Facebook chat there. But any comments on this one? I think clean and sherry is pretty bang on. There's a few nodding heads there. Is this anyone's first Adelphi bottling they've had? Yeah, there's a few hands going up. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is classic Adelphi, that very clean. We're getting into we're going to have some stuff that isn't sherry cask tonight, but very, very much in the style of what personally I think. But yeah, very, very excited if batch 5 starts with a link and ends with a wood. That's always a good idea.
Can you see the bottle on screen, Scotty, or is it?
I can on my phone, but not on this screen. So I'm going to dive around here. Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. It's just to give you a bit of a bottle shot. It's always nice to see, but we don't need to keep it on those screens for too much longer. Yeah. So yeah, in regards to Laudale, yeah, Laudale, there's going to be another one hopefully at some stage this year, probably in time for certainly Christmas over this side of the world. But we'll continue to do them, and I'm trying to go after stock to have a return of the Fascadale in the near future as well. So please watch this space. They're really great fun to put together, and obviously managed to get into so many other hands and get them pouring. So it's good. It's we're really happy with our supply for Laudale. So going forward, yeah, hopefully you'll see much more of it.
Excellent. There's a few questions I want to get into about being an independent bottler in 2021, because obviously the world's changed, and we've had a few people through chats like this, and it's going to be interesting to get your take. But I think we should move on to the next whiskey, which number 2 is a Dailuaine. And I will, for those in the Zoom, I'm just going to put the list up in case you haven't seen the list. There I might have got posted before a few people jumped in. But another one of my favourites, we've got a bit of a rainbow of colours in front of us in terms of the whiskey colours. So we started something quite sherry, dropped down to something a little bit paler, but this is also a sherry cask, I believe. Is this a refill?
Yep, this is refill, single cask. Again, unchill filter, natural colour, 52.2%. It's refill sherry, refill Oloroso sherry, and this from a butt. This is a big Oloroso sherry butt.
Just picking up on what Scotty said, what you said about how things have changed this last year as an independent bottler, and bringing in this particular cask. So obviously, as a team, it's not just about doing virtual tastings. It's also about conducting business virtually, even within our own team, even though we are now slowly migrating back to our offices. Over the last year, we've had to both select casks for bottling and also get together to taste and write tasting notes, as we always have done for Adelphi. But all of that has been done virtually. So we've been sending samples around the team and then joining on Zoom or equivalent. And we've had some very amusing evenings writing tasting notes. But one of the ones that really sticks out in my memory was this particular Dailuaine cask that we've got in front of us. And even though we had selected it already down to its quality, when we actually came to analyze it properly for the tasting notes post-bottling, we were really struck by the quality of this one. And I think from memory, Connal, it kind of, if you like, won that particular panel tasting.
Yeah, it's. I usually judge our Adelphi lists on what the staff want to buy, what the team want to buy, and there was a good few requests on this one. Yeah, really happy with it. It's unbelievably complex and heavy. If you like that style of Speyside whiskey with distillate shows, and distillate can be battered to death, to be fair, it can just hold up. So it's sort of like Mortlach, if you like, or Ben Rinnes. These big, heavy distillates show so well, and this is in refill. So I think balance is key, and I think it's a really fine example of Dailuaine, and one of these unsung heroes of Speyside for me. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And importantly, of course, the most important fact about Dailuaine is on the local railway. It has its own railway station called Dailuaine Halt, which I have on very good authority that the more train stations you have near your distillery, the better your whiskey tastes. It's a very true fact that I've heard. But I do love this style of whiskey, that really thick, oily, meaty sort of character. It is from a refill Oloroso hogshead, but it's still pretty pale. So I think the word balance there, Connal, that you were using is probably key here. But I mean, if you draw a whiskey that sort of, I describe a whiskey, the sort of whiskey that I like, and you went out and drew it, it's going to look a lot like this, I think, for me.
Yeah, I'll just read you some notes that we got. I've got our tasting notes that we did virtually, as Alex was saying. So Seville orange peel, sunflower seeds, tobacco leaf, peppercorn, brown sauce as an HP, brown sauce, Bloody Marys, and palate, we've got tiramisu, pecan nuts, maple syrup, and minty pan drops, or mints, glacier mints. So yeah, it's a big old drum at 52.2, which is quite low actually, considering it's only 13. It's actually quite low alcohol. But yeah, quite a tasty drum.
So just picking up on, just quickly on that note, I do remember that we got tomatoes, hence the Bloody Mary. And that is a very, very unusual tasting note in a whiskey. I think I've had tomatoes in Scotch maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 17 years in the tasting note. So it is quite a special whiskey, this, in terms of its uniqueness, if you like.
Yeah. So then just roughly, how deep into the virtual pub session were you when you wrote the tasting notes for this one?
Yeah, we're not quite SMWS with our tasting notes, but we try hard.
And also, you've got to think about it in terms of the selection this evening and the lineup. Now, this is coming in number 2 due to its color and weight and style. That's the same with a virtual tasting. So we start lighter and work to the heavy end, ending with big smoke. So I think we would have been relatively sober when we tried this one.
Yeah.
Relatively.
Yeah. To Ross Glover coming through on the Zoom chat there, I get the Bloody Mary coming through quite clearly. So yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I don't traditionally get a lot of tomato. I've got the odd cherry tomato note in whiskies, but not a lot of tomato in my time. Anyone? So this is sort of your 9, 10 a.m. decent night last night sort of dram. Just you sort of get up and go again. If sort of if say we take the blend you do, the Dancing Man Private Stock Reserve, that's more your wheat Bex if you're feeling fresh in the morning. This is if you've had a slightly bigger night than that.
I just want to chime in there. It's Weetabix.
It's not.
I think it also depends on when you're putting the Pinot Noir in there.
That's true.
Yeah. No, but look, in regards to Dailuaine, we've got some. I've already started, so I'm going to say it now, Alex. Sorry if I'm not supposed to, but we got some pretty special stuff coming through shortly, which is is slightly tweaked Dailuaine to show a waxy mid-palate character, maybe comparable to other distilleries that we know and love so well in the Northern Highlands. So that's, I'm really excited about getting some of that stuff out and showing you what it's like. But again, Dailuaine is just so solid, and it's a little bit more available than the likes of Mortlach these days. So it's great.
Yeah, picking up on that tweaking of well-known makes, there is actually a very good reason for this. So earlier we were talking about how the unsung heroes like Glen, Elgin, etc., Dailuaine, because they're not particularly favoured by their owners, or haven't been favoured by their owners as single malt in their own right, the volume produced is generally going for blending. Now, if, for example, one of those unsung heroes is becomes quite popular, shall we say, in its own right, then they have a concern that they won't have enough of it for blending. And if you have blends which require a particular style, in this case waxiness, if your waxy contributor is suddenly then removed from the ingredient list because it's becoming too popular as a single malt, you obviously have to try and find the waxiness somewhere else. And that is exactly what's happened in this case, where the single malt in question is a very famous North Highland distillery on the East Coast, has become very popular, and it's now virtually impossible to find it as an independent bottler as well. But it also means that the owner is having to produce a waxy style elsewhere. And in this case, they have very nicely used Dailuaine.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to sample, and this is a shameless plug, a independent bottling of a Northern Highland distillery that might have some fruity and waxy textures, I'd take a look at the Oak Barrel's latest hand-in-hand bottling from an undisclosed Northern Highlander that we did in collaboration with our friends Whisky and Almond down in Melbourne. That might have some of the characteristics that the team are talking about now. But do we get, I'm going to throw this to the room now. I love texture in whiskey. I was always, when I started getting into whiskey and I was working with my former business partner, she would write the tasting notes because she was so much better at picking out flavors. And I was always about texture. So weight and things like waxiness that are like candle wax isn't aroma, but the texture itself, is really important. Are we getting that sort of that waxy sort of texture in that? Yeah. And it's a funny thing. And do you know, like guys, what can create that? Is it a distillation thing? Is it a receiver thing? Is it a condenser thing?
So generally speaking, it falls into the category of black art of distillation rather than science. But there is definitely a contribution made from basically what is the stripping of the stills, the copper. So if you imagine your spirit still, over the years, every time you're flushing it into the intermediate receiver where you hold the spirit before it goes off to be received in the warehouse and cast, over the years, it is gradually stripping away a little bit of copper from the inside of the still. And that, as copper does, creates a kind of slightly bluey green tinge into the holding liquid there, if you like. And depending on the type of spirit and how long you've been running your stills, that will build up. And in some cases, I've seen it, taken out and sitting in a bucket, and it is fairly, the texture is fairly great, shall we say, and the color is fairly interesting too. So yeah, it happens naturally in most distilleries, some more than others, but I'm sure it's got something to do with the filling water as well at the end of the process.
Yeah, 100%. Let's move on to whiskey number 3, which I think is one that a lot of people are looking forward to. And I want to preface this with a bit of a question about being an independent bottler. Now, Adelphi is obviously established, and the term Adelphi and the people who work for the business have very good relationships in the industries. And if you sell a cask to Adelphi, you know it's going to be treated correctly. Something that I've noticed and had a lot of Scottish independent bottlers, whether they're based in Scotland or not, feed back to me in the past sort of 12, 18 months is the competition for casks is becoming absolutely cutthroat. and getting access to barrels is not only becoming difficult, becoming more expensive. I can say from personal experience last year, we here at the Oak Barrel lost out on barrels that we probably would have bought and bottled, because by the time the sample got to us, only 3 weeks later, someone else had tasted it and offered more than it was offered to us for. So how have you guys found it, actually sourcing, new barrels to keep those warehouses replenishing? Is it getting tougher?
Yeah, I mean, from my sort of view is that we're very lucky that Alex is sort of, and before him, Jamie, we have had some great relationships that are still there that we can source stock from. But yeah, you're right. It's, we're not seeing, you're not seeing Port Ellen and Ardbeg on the doorstep every day anymore. But look, it's just different, to be honest. And we're not changing, and that's I think a good thing, that we only bottle if it makes the grade, and it literally does go through a pretty big process to go into an Adelphi bottling. And I know that we've got two brand new recruits, Jenny Carlson and Graham Mackay, who have joined the company, and they're on the taste panel with us as well. And I don't think they quite believed how strenuous we go through these samples before they go into bottling. So I suppose it suits us, because on a good year, Adelphi will bottle 120 casks, if that, and that's a pretty big year for us. So we're still very selective in what we choose, and so it's okay for us just now, and we'll keep going in the way we're going for as long as we can. But it's all about finding the exciting whiskies that you'd have another dram off, so to speak. That's literally our selection process. And but yeah, it's just changed days. It's just that you're not getting 1980s whiskey now is becoming impossible. 70s, forget about it. And yeah, 90s and is the way to go. If you can, not even that's drying up, to be honest. So yeah, it's just about in regards to holding stock, we managed to sit on a little bit more. Now, if we're buying a parcel, we can afford to maybe sit on a few casks. With before, I mean, not when I was with the company, sure, but when Alex started, I think it was literally cask. You were waiting for the cask to come in the door with the empty bottles ready. Once you selected it, it was literally in and out, just in time, if you like. But now we hold on to a wee bit, but again, very, very small. Alex, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say basically that the relationships that we built up over the years in terms of trading and supply have enabled us to keep a really good base, if you like, of knowing that stock is coming in, that we're going to have something, tomorrow or next week or whatever, and that just in time has increased a little bit, so we've got enough for the next batch and so on. But you're always going to keep an eye out for the oddballs, the ones that are potentially privately owned or have come to market because someone died, or something different, unique. And just to give you an indication of where pricing is going for rarer and older stock, yesterday I received a phone call from someone, a private guy who I'd last spoken to in 2007, and he'd approached me back then to offer a rum barrel, so a 200-litre rum cask of Springbank from 1994. And I had offered him at the time in 2007, and I'll be perfectly transparent, I had offered him £994 for that cask. And I'd been outbid by Springbank, not by much, but I had been. Anyway, he had decided that neither offer was worth taking up. So he held on to the cask. And then he kind of forgot about it. So he rang me yesterday and he said, are you still interested in that cask? So I said, well, first of all, how much is left in it? And he said, not very much. It's about 100 bottles. And I said, okay, well, the good news is the price is going to be much better. And I offered him, shall we say, considerably more. And he said, well, look, thank you very much. That was a delightful offer. But I have been offered £22,000 for it already. So I'm going to take that. And I just about fell off my seat. So that just to give you an indication, in whatever that is, 13 years, that's the way prices have gone for older and rarer stock.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to see that sort of manifest, I'd highly recommend going back and watching the tasting we did with Ian and Kira from North Star. we did the trilogy of very exceptional Springbanks. They just released another indie we love, and just how much it almost drained out of Ian to get that across the line to do that was quite remarkable. But speaking of oddballs, and the Dailuaine was a big whiskey, and it would be not every tasting we would do that second in the lineup. But in the lineup we've got tonight, we sort of have to, because the next one is a bit of an oddball. And I am normally very, very good. These bottles come in, we break them down and send them out. I don't taste or smell anything, but I have to admit I couldn't resist stealing 2 mils of this when we were breaking this down. This is the Ben Nevis 5-year-old, which, speaking of, it's not 70s, it's not 80s, it's not 90s. It's a 2015 vintage, and this is funky. This has got a bit going on.
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. I hope you dished out knives and forks for the people tasting tonight. This is, it's received a lot of attention. This Ben Nevis, I mean, arguably for how youthful it is, and the colour, of course, it catches your eye. But it really is quite a funky sort of what you would call minging whiskey in Scotland. It's pretty dank. It's dunnage, old dunnage, and I'll read you out some tasting notes, which maybe this was later on in the evening, actually, just looking at this. But yeah, we've got a very savoury nose, swimming with aromas of new welly boots, marmite, beef jus, star anise, soy, and oyster sauce with black forest gateau and rich game. So yeah, it's something that's it's very, very savoury, and there's a lot going on. 5-year-old, so I mean, going from a balanced 13-year-old refill sherry Dailuaine into this absolute beast is balance is not something that belongs to this whiskey. Do you have any? We've done a couple of these, Alex. What's your thoughts on it? I mean, it's quite a polarizing dram, really.
I love it. I love the fact that you can get so much flavour. I'm not going to say complexity necessarily or balance, but flavour in 5 years in Scotland. It's just extraordinary. And what we've seen at Ardnamurchan, which is really, in terms of maturation climate, is the closest distillery to us that matures on site is Ben Nevis, basically. And so we have a lot of similarities in terms of how the Atlantic forces its environment on us. And to see what's been happening there in their traditional Dunwich warehousing in a cask like this is just extraordinary. It's a great make, Ben Nevis. It's something which, fortunately, we're going to see a lot more of in the whiskey world. They are undergoing a huge revamp as we speak, in terms of not only the building, excuse me, but also the single malt itself will become more obtainable. But yeah, I love whiskies like this. When I arrived at Adelphi back in 2003, 2004, one of the most recent bottlings by Jamie Walker had been a 5-year-old Springbank, which was very similar to this. It was dark and incredibly rich and meaty, if you like. And that had certainly raised some eyebrows at the time, as has this one. So yeah, great dram. You're not going to be able to have more than a few glasses in one sitting, but it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, a couple of comments coming through here. Sarah just dank in capital letters, which I think we can all agree on. Ben Nevis is spectacular. Wish it was available still. Yeah, this one pretty much sold out by the time I took it out of the box and tried to put it on a shelf. It was gone that quickly. But I mean, this, as you point out, this is very dark. And Adelphi, this is not uncommon territory. I mean, you had those beautiful Glenrothes casks, which I think started at about 6, and then went up to 7, 9, 8, 10 years. Like when you look at this, and maybe take colour out of the equation, but what makes you see a cask like this that is all flavour and go, we need to bottle this now, instead of going, let's sit on this and see what it does. Like how do you decide that this is ready now, as opposed to, say, in 2, 5, 10 years time?
Yeah, so I think I'm actually just going to tell you the story about these casks, because we actually forgot we had these. I'm just going to tell you the truth. So I think we got billed an invoice for rental, and we went, what's this cask rental invoice for I think there was five bats or five puncheons. I think they're puncheons, these casks, and we had bought them in a parcel, obviously, you know, from Newfill, and I think they were stored at Nevis. Anyway, it was a really nice surprise, and we got them in straight away, and they were obviously quite active. We've got another couple left, I think, and probably shouldn't have said that either. But yeah, we got it into glass, and we just thought, whoa, okay, so something needs to happen here, and yeah, we just felt that. Okay, in regards to flavor, it ticks all the boxes. Is it balanced? Absolutely not. It's proud not to be. But is it going to improve if we leave it? And we felt the answer was probably not. It's going to be. I mean, it would probably go a little bit longer, but we felt it was good enough to go out now. And the thing I like about this whiskey is that at Ardnamurchan, we've got whiskey that's from 2015, you know, and we're bottling Ben Nevis at 5 years old. It's a great thing, and it just fits into our sort of philosophy that if you have another dram of it, if it's interesting, then it goes into bottle. So we're not prejudiced against age, color, you know, distillery type. It doesn't matter. If it's good enough, it goes in. And so we bottled a couple of these. So yeah,
yeah,
I don't know.
And the other ones. The ones we've still got left will go further. I mean, one in particular is really, really exciting, and we think it will go, you know, quite a long way further in terms of its balance. But this one, yeah, it had to go into bottle.
What's your thoughts on it, Scotty?
Yeah, like it's just the funk. There's almost like a vegetal element to it as well. That's on the nose. It's not on the palate. The palate is that very warehouse, you know, forest floor, you know, composting leaves sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I love if I had to drink one whiskey for the rest of my life, I'm probably, you know, leaning for the Dailuaine as opposed to it. But you know, when you guys come back into town and we need to go out on the Sydney town for a little bit, then this is the whiskey to start with. This will set you right. Guys in the room, what do we think of that?
I'm still intrigued to know if it's going to get better, probably not. How do they decide?
Yeah.
It's not going to get any better. It's time. You ask the question, obviously, it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
What is the devil for? It's 61% alcohol. It could take another couple of years. But
Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard that question from the crowd, but basically going back to that mentality, you said for some of the casks will go longer, but this one needed to come out. What attributes you're looking and what tells you that it needs to come out in that process? What's the decision-making process there?
So it's partly the fact that we felt it was ready, but also crucially that given how much it has matured in 5 years, or the rate of maturation, shall I say, it could potentially get very, very woody and tannic if you leave it much longer. Without boring you too much on maturation and how it all works, because I don't really know it myself anyway, but basically there are 3 stages, and the crucial stage in a cool climate like Scotland is the interactive stage, which normally kicks in around 4 to 5 years, and you let that run as long as possible to get all the oils and fatty esters and everything coming out in the whiskey. Now, one of the potential changes to that is when you fill your whiskey at high strength, so higher than the traditional 63.5. If you're filling spirit into cask at around 69, which this could have been, given that it's still quite high, then you have a forced initial maturation. So before it gets to that interactive stage, the level of alcohol in the cask is attacking the wood and releasing more of those tannins quickly. So you've got to be very careful how long you leave those high strength ones in active wood.
Yeah, it's obviously you've got a lot of experience with Australian whiskey, and you've been here a few times and tried a lot of Australian whiskey. We know that you have Australian whiskey sitting in that warehouse. but there's a lot of similarities between the way this is matured to the way that a lot of Australian whiskey matures. And I think there's probably a similar element of wherever this was, whatever patch of, southeast Queensland in Scotland this was maturing in, would it have lasted another summer? Would it have started to fall apart? But no, excellent. I love, that's, again, why I love independent bottlers and why we've been such big fans of Adelphi is there's no rhyme or reason why you bottle something apart from the fact it's good, interesting as a bonus point, But I'm mindful of time, so we might move on to to number 4, which we've got here, which is going to be Breath of the Isles from memory. Yeah, Adelphi Breath of the Isles. So a distillery that is undisclosed, but this is part of a series. There's been, I think, Breath of Isla. There's been Breath of Speyside. So fair to say these are barrels that you receive that you can't necessarily put the distillery on for whatever reason?
Yeah, so this was a part of we've got a small parcel of these, and it's you'll come across this in the independent bottling world that we simply have parcels of casks or individual casks that we buy with the conditions that we are not allowed to put the distillery label on there. There's a few distilleries that operate like that, and it's completely fine. And our way of getting around that, I suppose, and I really quite like our series, the Breath series, if you like, the Breath of the Angels, is that we give you sort of the regionality of it. So the Isles is obviously there is no island region; it would be technically Highland, I suppose, but this definitely belongs to an isle, and we wanted to tell you that. And 13 years old from a refill Oloroso sherry butt, and coming in at 58.6. It's, for me, this is a lovely example of what this distillery in question is famous for. And I'll let you make your own mind up before. Well, I'm not going to tell you, but I can certainly hint towards things. But yeah, Alex, I mean, the Breath of the Isles, we've had a generous amount of recently. We bottled a Breath of Isla last year from mostly all single casks. Breath of Speyside, the one that we haven't done, I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't done a Breath of the Lowlands, and we haven't done a Breath of Campbelltown either.
Yeah, I think a Breath of the Tune could be quite.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Not sure what that one tastes like. No, we haven't. We've done Breath of the Highlands, Breath of Speyside, Breath of the Isles, Breath of Isla over the years. And again, these were introduced back in mid-2000s when I stumbled upon a section of casks in a warehouse belonging to one of our suppliers. And, names like Lagavulin, Talisker, things like that, sitting there. And I'd asked if I could maybe buy a few of them. And they said, well, unfortunately not, because they're contracted in terms of their supply, not to sell them as single malt. They can only be used for blending. So we came to an understanding that if we didn't name some of these whiskies, then we could get them as single casks. And over the years, it's tightened up a wee bit in that nowadays, quite often, we're allowed to select blind. So all we get is a sample, no indication of distillery name at all. And the ones we like then arrive in basically inert plastic containers. So they're not even in an original cask. And that way we have no indication where it comes from. Now, fortunately, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs demand a trail of paperwork when casks are bought and sold. So it's fairly easy to work out who owned this originally and make up some pretty decent assumptions about the original distillery.
So, yeah, I mean, there's probably some 4 a.m. tasting notes you can run through in a second on this one. But why this one is in the lineup at this point is I'm definitely getting quite a hit of smoke on the back palate here, or maybe not smoke so much, but peat. It's not coastal iodine TCP. It's a very earthy sort of, smouldering sort of smoke that I'm getting. And when I say like a big hit, I expect the 2 coming up are going to be bigger. But compared to what we've had, certainly I'm getting that aroma coming through.
Yeah, from our tasting notes, we've got peach melba, lychee, gorse, croissants, sweet corn lathered with butter and driftwood, palate, hobnob biscuits, sweet and salty popcorn, and a whiff of peat bogs, and a lurking peat in the background. But yeah, it's got a very sort of sweet, salty kind of thing going on. And yeah, I'm literally not going to go any further than that. I think it's if you know this distillery, this will be what it maybe used to taste like many years ago.
Yeah, and I'm not very good at picking whiskies blind. Anyone who has seen me compete in the Australian Malt Whisky Championships will know that I'm absolutely atrocious at it. But if this might be a distillery that I might be thinking of, then yes, this is a distillery that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was getting into whiskey properly, was a distillery that I really, really enjoyed. That is sort of the official bottlings for me on a personal level have died off a little bit, but there is still a lot of beauty to be found in their independent bottlings. So I think this is a very classic example of this distillery, which I definitely don't know what it is. Yeah. Thoughts on this one? Tasty, beautiful. It's good. I'll just have a quick look through the grounds, but yeah, we might sit on this one and maybe move on to the one next. This is actually one of the few releases I do have. I've got a couple of bottles of that left on the website or in store here today, whichever is quicker, the people online or the people in the store. But move on to a distillery that I love and I think is really, really underrated, and I think has seen some exceptional bottlings in the hands of yourself and probably the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is, where I first got introduced into to these brands. Would have been about 6 or 7 years ago. You had some very good releases from Ardmore from memory. This is a little bit older than some of the ones I've tried before. This is an 18-year-old, an 02, so the oldest in tonight's lineup. And for me, what I would describe as the correct colour of a whiskey. After 18 years, nice and light and just sort of like champagne gold highlights. But we've gone through some big flavours so far. This is a sit down and take a little, a couple of minutes with this nose.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and I agree with you. It's not a trendy distillery, let's be honest, but it just produces quality stuff, and yeah, it was reasonable to get hold of. Maybe not this kind of age anymore. I mean, I think when I first came to Adelphi 3 years ago, we had a couple of sort of mid-90s bottlings, I think 96 from memory, maybe it was 98. And it was just absolutely beautiful stuff. It really was. And so 2002, 18 years old, 55.8 from a refill bourbon hogshead. So yes, it's a more natural color, if you like. And it's the casks done its job and the distillate's there. Just looking at our notes on it, sorry I can't join you for a dram, it's just a wee bit too early, but spicy on the nose with bursting with prunes, forest floor, peanut brittle, kippers and soot. So it's very the smoke is there, but it's that lovely Highland peat rather than the Isla that we know. But I think it's a great example of an Ardmore. Alex, do you remember much about this bottling? I just remember wishing that we had more.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that just it appeared in as an offer, if you like, and we thought, well, Ardmore, it's going to be good. But then when we tasted it, it was like, oh yeah, that's a very special one. I hope we'll have that. But I mean, thinking of the distillery as well, going back to when I was trying to get into the industry in the 90s, and the industry itself was just picking up its shirt tails a wee bit from the last overproduction and underselling period, if you like, the last dip. And so really, if you wanted a job in the industry, production was the way to go. Sales and marketing, which was what I was aiming for, was certainly not available at the time. But I befriended a few people around the industry to try and get a steer. And one of those, who's become a great friend over the years, was a man named Andrew Jury. And he at the time was chairman of Allied Distillers. And this was one of their malts. And I remember him talking to me about Ardmore and about how important it was to their portfolio in terms of being peaty, smoky, if you like, for the teachers' blend. So it was designed basically for teachers. And he's always seen it as one of the best distilleries they ever had. And I would agree. I love that kind of kippers thing. And if you were ever fortunate enough or unfortunate enough in the old days to stumble upon the town of Arbroath in the east of Scotland, where kippers are famous, Arbroath Smokies, you could see and smell the smoke. So as you approach from a distance, there was this kind of brown haze over the town, and just this waft of smoking fish, which were basically hung up to dry on washing lines with damp Hessian sacks over them, and that was the smell. You can imagine it.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's not. I don't think it gets the recognition as, say, something like a Pulteney and Wick or distilleries in Campbelltown that are very influenced by their town, and to understand that distillery, you need to understand the town. I think almost Ardmore fits into that category, but doesn't almost get that credit. And but I know it's very early for you guys, so I excuse you for not having a dram, because Hugh Hefner is smashing through the margaritas with us, so that's good. I mean, they're either margaritas or they're very expensive Ardmore 18 whiskey sours. So he's doing your work for you. Don't worry about it.
Well, I don't even have the whiskies in front of me. Thanks, Scotty. But I am enjoying a nice 17-year-old malt lac from Adelphi, so which is quite lovely.
Yeah.
That's our sample.
Yeah, we'd like some samples in the room, please. But if it comes off a boat and you send it to me, it's your own fault if the bottles don't come with the nip taken out of all of them. That's nothing to do with me. That's your own fault.
Well, I guess it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah. When we get on to number 7, I was very surprised to see that bottle fully sealed by the time it arrives with me. I thought it was definitely going to be attacked.
I definitely thought about it.
Yeah.
Probably too, Scotty.
Yeah. I'm gonna actually. I haven't finished this. If you finish this one at home or not, that's up to you. But I want to put this up against a couple of the others and come back to it again, because I think this is going to evolve over a little bit of time. We might move on to, if we're in Champagne territory, we're into Sauv Blanc territory with whiskey number 6, which is our Kalila. Depends on which bloke in the pub at Port Ellen you run into. 12-year-old. Now, this is I think a refill American oak cask, because the colour is very, very light on this one. But
Yeah,
on the nose, it's pretty clear where this comes from.
It's just classic, and the more as time goes on, it's just the most consistently solid Islay whiskey, well, on the island, to be honest, and available, I suppose, from an independent bottling perspective. I mean, Kalila is just always there. It's always good. The distillate's always solid, and I think it just does well. And we've been very fortunate to have it in its most natural state, I suppose, like this in a refill bourbon hogshead. But also we've had it in first fill sherry in PX and Oloroso, and it just does so well. And it's one of those. I always have a bottle of Kalila in my cupboard, and it's 306 bottles, refill bourbon hogshead, 54.9%, 12 years old, 2008, and yeah, it's we've got a colour of Sauv Blanc's very good, pale straw we put. And yeah, we have got on the nose crispy dried seaweed, oyster shells, preserved lemons, pickled lemon rind, and tobacco, and then palate earthy mezcal, almost like ashy, briny, sweet, savoury. Swimming pool changing rooms. There you go. There's one. I don't know if you. I'm assuming that's on the nose, not the palate. It just balanced, really, really balanced. And I mean, you can wax lyrical about Kalila because is it not your favourite, Islay, Alex?
It's one of, I mean, if you look at it sort of semi-scientifically as a make that we've, obviously been selecting from over the years at Adelphi. So Charlie and I, in the early days, we kind of kept a score. I haven't done so much latterly, but really, the average hit rate for selecting a single cask of Adelphi was 1 in every 40 that we tried. So that was across the board. And Culila and Clynelish, their average hit rate was 1 in 3. So it just shows, the consistency and quality from those two distilleries, and also the fact that I love that kind of style of whiskey. Maybe not the swimming pool.
I get that mezcal-y note, that sort of roasty sort of thing, but it's almost a little bit minerally as well. As you say, Connal, it's classic Culila. I mean, we haven't been there in a little while. Most of us in Australia, we haven't been out of the country for a little while. It's still it's the biggest distillery on Islay in terms of production, if I'm correct. Do we? Is it just trucking along? As stuff? Have they just been producing distilleries like this during the past 12 months, or are they slowed down? Or
so Culila actually nothing to do with COVID, but it was shut. Well, it was certainly working at a very small level as they revamped the buildings. From what I gather, Clynelish, Culila, Glenkinchie, potentially Talisker, I can't remember now, are all getting a big visitor centre revamp in line with Diageo's drive towards, bringing new single malts into the portfolio. And we're also just about to witness the opening of the Johnny Walker Experience in Edinburgh, which is going to be this incredible multi-story building with rooftop bar right in the centre of Edinburgh, which will then kind of signpost you virtually to the distilleries in question, these ones with new visitor centres. So I've seen pictures of what Clynelish has been doing, and in fact, Connal and I are due to go up there June, I think. We've been invited up to see Clynelish. Apparently, yeah, through our friends at McLean and Bruce.
I thought that was the other distillery next door.
Well, it'd be rude not to see both of them while we're there.
Yeah.
Anyway, and maybe taste a few casks.
20 people here and the 20 people online are invites in the mail. Is that correct?
Yeah. Look, we have to check it out first before, just to make sure it's all right. But yeah, Culila, I believe, is back in full production. And when the pandemic was at its most on Islay, which was the first lockdown, and they were just basically shutting off local communities around the country, I'm not entirely sure if all the Diageo distilleries were operating or not, but certainly it was minimal, and supply in and out was minimal, just because of the ferry and everything else.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Obviously, I work here at the Oak Barrel. We're at the coalface of often what people are asking for, and people are often searching for birth year bottlings and that sort of thing. And they come and say, "Oh yeah, I'm looking for a bottle the year I was born." And say, "Oh, what year were you born?" "Oh, 1983." And you go, "Oh shit, mate, you're in a bit of trouble here." There's been, I don't know about Scotland, but in Australia in lockdown, there was a lot of kids born in 2020, particularly towards the last couple of months of 2020. Are those kids in 18, 20 years time going to find it very tough to find 2020 vintages of whiskey?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, from our own point of view, we were 4 months without production last year, which is considerable for a distillery which is building stock for the future. But there was nothing we could do. I mean, we literally. We were obviously in the very room you were standing in March 2020, the last stop before we fled.
13th March 2020. Yeah. It was
that?
It was Friday the 13th. It was,
Oh no.
So it was. That was the last physical tasting, wasn't it, that we've done?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
It was. So yeah, we fled on the last plane out. And in terms of when we got home, we obviously had stopped the visitor centre at the distillery that had closed its doors. That was the first to go. Then we closed the office in terms of sales, marketing and stuff like that. Everyone was working from home. But the distillery itself, the production, you can't just turn off the tap because it's still 7 or 8 days from the last mash to run the whole process through fermentation, distillation and filling into cask. And we also had an obligation, because of our sort of symbiotic and sustainable approach to distilling up in Ardnamurchan, we owe the animals of Ardnamurchan a regular supply of draff in the colder months so they can eat. And coming into March, April, crucial because of lambing in particular and calving, you've got to make sure there's enough draff. So we had to keep the distillery in operation because of the animals, basically, until I think the second week of April. And then we closed the doors until July, August, in fact, when we started again.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be a very fascinating period, and maybe what we were talking a little bit about independent bottlers and how access and availability is improving or declining. Those answers may not be, may not make themselves clear for another, year or two, depending on what the big boys in the room decide to do with their stocks. So it's going to be fascinating. That's our last official whiskey for tonight. And I have to say, it's been great to go through Adelphi again and dedicate a whole night to Adelphi, because we've been so excited about Ardnamurchan, your distillery, coming online with the AD Spirit releases and then the first single malt last year. I'm going to throw it to the people in the various chats and to the people in the room here to see if they have made maybe a favourite or a style, because we've gone through, I called this one from Ben Nevis to Connal because I thought that might be the two extremes of the tasting. And I think that was probably largely right. But I have to say that Ardmore, particularly the nose there, I think I'm going to be thinking about that long into the night after I finish that dram. But anyone have any favourites from tonight in terms of whiskies? Anyone think that the funky Ben Nevis? Yeah. Ben Nevis. A couple Ben Nevises. I mean, this is a very good Kalila as well. Very good. And if you've noticed, I am switching between Kalila and Kalila because I learned how to say Kalila at the Ardview Inn in Port Ellen many years ago, and it's been ingrained into me. And Diageo are trying to beat it out of me. So when I remember, I say Kalila. When I'm speaking naturally, I say Kalila, but I'm getting there. But I think that's a very good example. Marco, what do you think? What was your jump out of the night?
Me, the Dailuaine, because of the mouthfeel, that really oily, thick mouthfeel. I love that one.
Yeah,
Dailuaine was second favourite.
Yeah, Dailuaine. Sarah, Josh, Dennis, all going for the Ben Nevis. Josh Dailuaine as the runner-up. Breath of the Isles. I think that's actually a real sleeper hit, that Breath of the Isles. It's always funny when you do a lineup like this and you've got a lot to talk about the distillery, and you can spend an hour talking about a distillery, and then you get an undisclosed distillery and you there's a hesitation to brush over it. But it's an exceptional example of that distillery. But yeah, I think there's a couple of the Ardmore, one of the Breath of the Isles left. And if you see the link I put into the Zoom chat, and you can see here, I do keep some stuff away in the archives. So there are a few other bottlings that I've released for tonight only, some first release. But when we were putting this tasting together, it was about 2.5 months ago when we knew this Adelphi was coming. And we were very excited about our new screen and some new gears and microphones and stuff to do these hybrid tastings that we were doing. And the stock arrived and this tasting sold out in all of, about 4 days or something like that. But then we had to wait a little bit because we decided to put something a little bit special on as a surprise 7th here tonight. So I don't know if maybe someone from whether Alex or Connal, you want to introduce this one, but a whiskey I can honestly say I'm incredibly excited about, and this is its world debut. This particular whiskey, it's been tasted before.
Yeah, and if you, I've got a screen shot if you want to show the people in the room what we're about to taste. It's very
When you're,
exciting.
is that the one?
That's the one. So not the best close up of the label, but I'll show you the next photo as well. But yeah, very, very excited. You should really be introducing this, Scotty. But this is going to be one of the first single casks. Well, certainly one of the first single casks that we're doing exclusively for yourselves at the Oak Barrel, brought to you through Baranos and Ben. And something that you've selected is a peated bourbon barrel of Ardnamurchan. So that is your bottle in all its glory. And a little bit about it, we've got hopefully. Where is it? There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So cask number 384 has been selected, and will be on the way to you very, very soon to celebrate 65 years. You don't look a day over 35, Scotty.
Mate, I'm an excellent poster boy for drinking whiskey because, because I couldn't work at the Oak Barrel till I was 18, obviously. So, you do the maths from 56 at 18 onwards. I feel like I'm doing very well.
You're doing exceptionally well.
But this is exceptionally exciting. For those who know, we've had a long relationship with Adelphi and Ardnamurchan. And it was very much when this opportunity even became remotely available, for those who might have done the tasting with the samples, I actually saved a few of the boxes back here. There was a peated bourbon cask in that. And if I think we spoke it via email to say, if we could get anywhere near something like that, I would be over the moon. But this is a whiskey that I want everyone to take your time with. Show lots of tasty notes, so I don't have to write them, because what you say tonight is going to be my tasty notes for the promotion coming up. But this is like, even putting how good this whiskey is to one side, just to be in this conversation is very, very exciting. So before I talk about what it means to us in the Oak Barrel, do you guys want to, like, where did this cask come from? It's obviously a 5-year-old. It's very, very different to the 5-year-old Ben Nevis we've just had. But this was relatively early in the run of Ardnamurchan.
Yeah, look, the excitement is mutual. We're honoured to be able to supply one of the first ever single casks from our own distillery to you guys in the Oak Barrel. And the great thing is, I mean, just like with Adelphi having to be a virtual, certainly a much more virtual company over the last year in terms of tasting, selection, and all the rest of it. Now that we have the whole sort of bottling scenario worked out, and we have our maturing stock up the distillery, down here in Fife, we have a sort of rolling stock of mature Ardnamurchan. And from that, we can pick the next batch for the single malt. And I just keep it topped up. So at any given time, we have about 400 Ardnamurchan single casks, literally about 10 meters from where I'm sitting, the smell wafting through the office door. And when we go about doing a batch of single malt, we're obviously looking for some consistency. And so we're, as a panel, we're nosing each of the casks to see how it has matured. We're selecting the batch. And every now and then, within that selection process, there'll be a cask that jumps out and it goes, I'm a single cask. There's nothing to stop us putting it in a batch, but it's also going to be very exceptional as a single cask. And this was one of those. It's from our first run of peated spirit at the distillery. So we started using peated spirit or peated malt in 2015, about 6 months after we started production. So this is the original sample I have here, which has your name on it, I think. Yeah.
Oak Barrel. Good.
As you can see, it's slightly washed out because we've been tasting it a few times just to make sure. But it's it's very similar to that one that was in the tasting pack, both in cask number and also I think in terms of where it was maturing in the distillery. So if you don't know from previous chat, we have an original maturation warehouse, and then we have several new ones up the hill. The original one is built on 2 levels. The first of those levels being virtually underground, so it's kind of built into the hillside, and it retains its temperature and humidity pretty much year round. That's perfect for long-term maturation. And then we have an upper level on that warehouse. That's concrete floor, and it's very close to the roof. So we get much more fluctuation in temperature and a much drier atmosphere. And that promotes quicker maturation. And sadly, it also promotes loss of volume. But what we found up there is massive consistency in our 2015s, which are mainly matured there. And in particular, these peated American oak barrels, which this one is. So yeah, really excited that you guys are going to get this. It's all bottled. I'm not quite sure when it's going to get there, but maybe Connal can pitch in with that.
It's all pretty much ready to go. It's all down to Ben now. Getting on a boat on the way. But just to give you a bit of the cask that we chose for the tasting pack was cask number 371. So this is literally, it would have been the same day it would have been filled. So this is 384. So look, I'm just so chuffed that you've decided to bottle this to celebrate 65 years and such a close relationship that we have with yourself, Scotty, and the team at Oak Barrel. It's just a privilege to bring this to you, and I really hope it goes down well. I'm reasonably confident it will do. So yeah, 5-year-old single cask Ardnamurchan coming your way. Watch this space.
Well, considering how in demand the first single cask you released was, it was the only way we were going to keep it on the shelf was to buy a whole barrel. It was the only way we keep it there. But this is really interesting. I've only tried this whiskey before by itself, with hours either side of trying anything else. So trying it after 6 whiskies, but then particularly the final 3, which had different levels but different types of smoke as well. This is actually showing it a different way, and it's actually coming out with more of the gravelly crushed rock sort of thing, because the smoke and that smouldering embery thing is not as prominent. But I still get the chili flakes on the back of the palate as well that I really love. It is 65 years of the oak barrel, as we say, and we're going to have a bit of a party towards the end of the year. We don't know what that looks like, and this is sort of pseudo the first announcement of some very special things we're doing. It's lovely to hear what you say about the oak barrel, but this is Ardnamurchan. This is not buying a single cask from a distillery in Scotland. This is Ardnamurchan. This is going to be very special. I've described it to a few people who, sort of tried the first release of a single malt that came out last year, and it's like, man, they're onto something. They're like, that's really good. And I was like, yeah, it's like getting onto Springbank at the ground level. That's how I feel about this distillery. So this is really, really special in how it tastes. And anyone who wants to throw tasty notes or anything saves me a bit of a job, because as we sort of say, sharing is caring. So that's all I've got left of this sample bottle. And most of that has to go to the staff members who have been asking to try it for a little while, and I haven't allowed. So I may not try this again after tonight until it comes in, aiming at roughly August for this one. Couple of comments coming through here, and someone's already figured it out. Suspect this is a 2021 Oak Barrel Whiskey Fair release. Yes, that's what we're sort of aiming for the end of August. So this is actually online now for pre-orders. We're running a special price in terms of the pre-orders. It's going to be about $249, so about $225 for members, but it's $222, so $199 for members. So keeping under that $200 mark, which is a rare and unusual trick for this sort of stuff. But I've been sitting on this for a little while. I don't know how many people you've told, Ben, but I've been very good by not telling anyone.
I haven't told anybody.
Yeah.
At all. But to get just back to your excitement about this as well, Scotty, you secured yourself a Ardnamurchan single barrel. I think that it's pretty fair to say that I speak for Connal and Alex as well, that we're also pretty excited that you guys have picked it up, and we're able to do this single barrel for you guys, because you've been a pretty avid supporter of Adelphi and Ardnamurchan since day dot, since it's been here in Australia. And the fact that we're able to do this for you, we appreciate that as much as you appreciate it in reverse. So yeah, thank you.
I would second that. And sorry, Scotty, just quickly to say that the whole issue of allocating stock, whether it be Adelphi or Ardnamurchan, I very carefully handed on to Connal as soon as he stepped in the door 3 years ago almost. And it was the best thing I've ever done. But anyway, there is a queue, there is a list of people that we have traded with for Adelphi over the years, wanting single casks of Ardnamurchan. And as strange as it may seem, I have got to keep the brakes on how much Ardnamurchan we release in these early years, because we only built up stock slowly when we started. We didn't start the ground running at 400,000 litres, which we are now, per annum. We started carefully, and we had teething issues with boilers and all those kind of things to work through. So this 2014, 2015 stock is absolutely prime, and we don't have a never-ending supply. So yeah, just to say, we genuinely, we wanted to say thank you to you guys for supporting us over the years.
Yeah, and look, I would absolutely love to stand here and take all the credit. I love doing that. Any distiller does all the hard work. I get to stand here and take all the credit. I love doing that. But I first got introduced to Adelphi as a punter here in the Oak Barrel. So there's actually people that came before me that should also get a bit of that credit, including Dave Withers, who's now Master Distiller at Archie Rose, Distiller of the Year, depending on which awards you look at. And the gentleman up the back of the room, which you guys probably can't see on the stream there, the owner of the Oak Barrel, Paul Downey. God is officially in the house tonight. So I don't think God's been to a whiskey tasting here for a couple of years. But he heard you guys were coming and had to come down.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, I think actually what's testament to this whiskey is the fact that you've just put it at the end of it, following like 6 single casks. I mean, that's if it still holds well, it shows well after that, then it's probably onto something. Because especially following a Kalila as well. So yeah, I'm just delighted that it's going to be on the way very soon. Delighted it's hopefully going to make August for your fair, and gutted that we're not going to probably be there to show it in person. But never mind, we will be there soon.
Yeah. No, it's a very, very special release. A couple of comments coming through. Do you have a link for the pre-orders? It's live on the website now. That's what I ran around and did, but I will put a link in there. We are going to sell a limited amount in pre-orders. We're not going to sell everything. There's a cap on it because we want to have a bit of fun with it when it lands, depending on what the world looks like there, and we'll do this. But yeah, it was interesting. I actually had to go back and nose it again when we were putting the lineup, because I didn't want to do it last, and I thought, okay, is it going to stand up? And I certainly think it's different to when I've tried it. But I still get like heaps of that. It's a peated ex-bourbon cask, but there's malted sweetness on the nose still. And I think for us, I don't know about you guys in the room, but for me, that's amplified, that sweetness, and then that crushed rock, that gravelly thing that I quite love. And then, the smoke really, really pulls through. And yeah, very, very, very special release. But look, lads, I know that here in Sydney, even though we're not allowed to stand up in pubs for the next couple of days and there's no singing or dancing allowed, we have the rest of the night to enjoy ourselves, where you guys have a full day of work to do, to get on with. So I want to say thank you again so much for taking time out of your day and getting up nice and early to come and talk to us, let alone talking us through these whiskies, and certainly with the single cask, which we're going to have a lot of fun with. Raise our glasses to you, and I might swing this camera around so we can get a round of applause, and you can see everyone. Give a round of applause very quickly. If we give to the boys and to Ben, that'd be excellent.
Thank you so much for having us back, Scotty. Just a shame we can't go and hit the town now. And the other problem is that I hear that some of our favourite places have moved since we were last there.
I can say on good authority, and this goes for everyone in the room as well, the new version of Burrow Bar is exactly as exceptional as the previous version.
That's good news. That's good news.
And all your Adelphi bottles are still behind the bar there. They haven't thrown. They survived the move, you know, a block and a half up the road. So, yeah, excellent. But look, thank you again. We'll let you go. And I assume we'll do this again soon, but hopefully in the not too distant future, either we'll be over there or you'll be here to have a bit of a chat. So thank you very much. And thank you everyone on the Facebook and the YouTube. I've been trying to keep the comments. If I've missed anything, I'll go back and reply to it. But you've all got my email, so if there's any other questions, hit me up direct. So thank you very much. I'm going to kill the social media streams now. And we're going to have a quick chat in the Zoom though. But mate, lads, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.